Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to Exploring Lord of the Rings. I'm having that feeling again. This often happens when I go away to the regional moots because, it's just a short trip. I was only gone for 3 days. But it's always such a fun time going out and getting to meet people. And this, of course, this was a particularly intense experience, I have to say. This past weekend, because not only was there the moot, but I also went to the World Series game, so that was pretty awesome and very intense. And not only did I go to a World Series game, I went to the 18-inning World Series game, and was there for 7 hours and 20 minutes, which was pretty cool. But like I said, it made the whole weekend feel like it was about 4 weeks long. Anyway, it was really fun. Had a great weekend. Arrowhead, exactly. That's the game I chose. Well, it was the only one I could attend. Game 4 conflicted with moot activities, so we were still involved with stuff, and I was flying home on Sunday, so it was the only one I could go to. And boy, did I get my money's worth, can I just say. But anyway, yeah, it was great. So what a great weekend. But yes, I do always feel when I come home from these, like I've been gone for weeks, right? So I almost, all week I'm sort of beginning things by saying things like, welcome back. It's been a long time. And I'm like, no, actually I was here last week. It's the same time as normal. It just feels like more. But anyway, glad you guys could join me. Glad that I am trebly glad that I am here with you guys this week, because of course that means that the Red Sox won the World Series in 5, like I predicted. So we're safe and able to do class here just as planned. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, timey-wimey stuff, exactly. Gilgear, that's exactly it. Anyhow, so again, many thanks for those of you who could join me at LA Moot. We had a wonderful time, some really great discussion. It was great to meet a bunch of you. And it's funny, over the last, several moots, one thing I've been accustomed to whenever we've had events is, of course, getting to meet people whose names I'm familiar with, right? Like people whose names I've seen on various lists, for years, right? Student lists or attendee lists or donor lists or, all kinds of lists I have with people's names on it. And some of them I've been seeing for years, right? So when I see them, when I meet, when I finally see that name on a name tag, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity, right? This time, not just this past weekend, but for the last several moots, of course, I keep meeting people and whom I know primarily by their Twitch or Discord handles. So Belongspond, I got to meet, got to have dinner there, and hang out on Saturday. That was really fun. Anyway, a lot of really great times meeting with several of you, actually. So thanks for those of you who could come to LA Moot, which reminds me that I want to prompt anybody who's in the vague area of Charlotte, North Carolina, to come join me at Magnolia Moot. We're going to be down in the Southeast in 2 weeks. Well, a little less than 2 weeks. So weekend after next on November 10th, we'll be down in Charlotte. So I hope you'll be able to join me. Some a good-looking crowd already coming in there. Stephanie, so good to be able to see you there. Excellent. Arrowhead, you're going to come too. Fantastic. That's great. So anyway, there's still time to register for that. If you haven't gotten a chance to yet, just go to signumuniversity.org and then scroll down a little bit to the events panels, and you can catch that. Okay, so anyway, that's going to be great fun. Hope that you'll, some more of you also will be able to join me there. And yeah, we're going to be hosted by Johnson C. Smith University, one of my favorite institutions down there in that area. My home away from home in the South. So really looking forward to getting back to JCSU and looking forward to a good meeting down there. That's right, Cecilia, Amy, and Anna are coming. Excited about that too. Going to get looking forward to the chance to meet them as well. Going to be really cool. So, and like I said, still time to register. We're a little more than a week and a half away, but I hope you'll get a chance to come join us if you can. Oh yes, the other thing I wanted to make sure to mention. So we're doing we're in the last 2 days of the special that Signum is running on the special that Signum is running on our Anytime Audit course on Chaucer, my Canterbury Tales class, my Chaucer 2 class technically, on the Canterbury Tales, which we were doing in celebration of Chaucer's death day, which was last week. So the sale goes through tomorrow, through the 31st of October at midnight. So at midnight on Halloween, the discount will be over. So just go to the signumuniversity.org homepage and you'll see the ad for it there at the top. You can get full access to all of the course materials, including all of my recorded lectures, plus all the reading assignments and the handouts, and not to mention you will be an auditing student of Signum, so you'll get access to our library resources and everything else. So you can get that. The tuition is only $75 for the next 2 days for the Canterbury Tales class. So I wanted to make sure to draw your attention to that before that expired. So, all right. Well, tonight we are going to try to move along here, where we are approaching another piece of poetry, which is always, these are always major landmarks, of course, in our discussion. We're not going to get there tonight, but we're going to try to move our way through the wilderness here. And last time we spent a lot of our discussion, of course, about the Nazgûl, not really discussing what was happening as much as what wasn't happening, right? Namely, more attacks by the Nazgûl. This tonight, when we get to our next passages of text as we cross the river and into the Trollshaws, I want to be thinking about sort of the big picture of what Aragorn's plan is, primarily, as once again, of course, the narrative primarily follows the point of view of the hobbits, who don't know what's going on, right, and don't really know the plan. So what can we conclude? What can we conclude about the plans of Aragorn based on what we see there? So that's the plan. But before we get to that, there are several more Nazgûl related questions that people have. I can tell that kind of trying to process the whole, like, what's going on with the Nazgûl here is a pretty major thing, and I will acknowledge it's been a really major thing for me as we've been going through. So we'll see about that. And actually, Most Majorum there on Twitter asks a good question, which actually was also asked on the discussion boards, which I didn't get to. So I might as well actually just talk about that now, which is, do the Nazgûl know the location of Rivendell? I don't know. I don't see very much reason to think that they necessarily would. It's supposed to be secret, right? And they don't do Eriador much. I mean, presumably the Witch King is more or less familiar with it. Maybe the Witch King knows about it from his Angmar days, or at least has a general sense of where it is, even if he couldn't actually walk into it himself, just find it, and waltz into it. Maybe Rivendell is unplottable, JJ suggests. It's possible. So yeah, he probably in any case they're going to know it's there, right? I mean, Rivendell was involved in the wars with Sauron back in the Second Age, so they're going to know about Rivendell. Again, whether or not he could ride up to it and knock on Elrond's door, maybe not, but certainly he. Yeah, and exactly as Trifle and Lalaith are saying, Rivendell was besieged at one point. I've always wondered exactly what that looked like, by the way. I mean, a siege of Rivendell. Exactly. Like, what precisely that means. Because it can't be a siege in the normal sense. Exactly. Right? That it, like, you know, a walled city with an army outside, right? Because it's not a walled city. It's a valley, right? So what? Were they up around the valley and they were kept from coming in? How were they kept from coming in, right? Again, it's just like, it's not the normal siege warfare kind of situation, right? So Lilith, yeah, it is possible that there's some sort, you know, with like protective magic over Rivendell in some sense, right? So that they were kind of outside, you know, I don't know what, like the aura of Rivendell and not able to come in. Lilith, yeah, I mean, we do have a model for that in the Girdle of Melian, but we have no indication of anything like that really working for Elrond. Maybe, I mean, it's possible, but anyhow, you know, I'm as I say, I'm not quite sure what that looked like, and it may even have been a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, like if you know the general area where Rivendell is, right, and you park your army nearby. Again, I don't know. That would be an interesting thing. Someday, let's recreate the Siege of Rivendell. That's what we need to do, but not tonight. Anyway. One way or the other, I do think there's good reason to think that the Nazgûl certainly know of the existence of Rivendell and can probably make a shrewd guess that that's where they're headed, right? So that they're going to expect the company, you know, the hobbits and Strider to be headed out in that direction. You headed out east towards Rivendell. That would be sort of obvious, right? And would obviously explain Strider's desire, anticipation, I guess, that the Ringwraiths are likely to try to cut them off at the choke points, of which there are two, namely the two rivers, right, which they have to cross. Anyhow, so let's. But that's a great question, and as I said, I know that was on other people's minds as well. But so that was a pre-gaming question. It didn't even count as one of our Nazgûl questions. But I'm going to try to get through them so that we can actually move forward into the text here tonight. But first, okay. Diddlebaum was asking, when two Ringwraiths stopped at the edge of the dell, during the attack on Weathertop, of course, maybe they were susceptible to Frodo's commands and were unsure of what to do. Maybe the two Ringwraiths who stopped when Frodo drew his sword interpreted his actions as a command from the holder of the One Ring. Did Frodo's cry of Elbereth hurt the Ringwraiths more because he was wearing the ruling ring as he shouted her name? Is that crazy? No, it's not crazy, Diddlebaum. We do know, of course, that... We do know, of course, that the Ring of Power, you know, the ruling ring does in fact rule the Nine. So that's, you know, that obviously works, right? But I feel pretty strongly about the fact that Frodo cannot command them. Yes, he's wearing the ruling ring. But no, I do not believe that he can command them. And here I am reminded, of course, of the conversation that he and Galadriel have, right? Later on, he's going to ask Galadriel, hey, I'm permitted to wear the ruling ring, but, you know, all y'all are always talking about how, you know, if Sauron has the ring, then all of the thoughts of all the others will be exposed to him. He's like, when I wear it, why can't I see everybody's thoughts, right? That sounds kind of awesome. You know, and... her answer is, you haven't tried. And then she adds, don't try, right? In other words, one way that I think we can paraphrase Frodo's question here is, hey, shouldn't I automatically get all the powers of, you know, Sauron wielding the ruling ring? I mean, it's the ruling ring, right? Shouldn't I be able to, like, rule folks and stuff if I'm wearing the ruling ring? Is that like an automatic perk when I put on the ruling ring? And Galadriel's answer is no, it's not automatic, right? You have to, it could, in fact, give you resources, right? If you bend your will in this direction, your will be strengthened to the will be, you know, sort of conditioned and strengthened to the domination of others, right? And Erecheb, you're exactly right. He is, and JJ as well, he is going to start applying his mind in that way, right? With Gollum, right? He's going to be daunting the will of Gollum and threatening him with the ring to command him even to his death, right? And that's sketchy, right? That's dangerous ground that Frodo is beginning to walk on, right? There in Book 4, which we'll get to before too long, but he's not done it yet, right? And he hadn't done it he hadn't done any of that by the time he was in Lothlorien, and I see no reason to think he's done anything of the kind here. In fact, what we actually see in the scene is quite the opposite of that, right? Rather than him asserting his will and attempting to increase the dominance of his own will by the power of the ring, he puts on the ring in submission, right? His own will is dominated, so that he puts on the ring practically against his own will, right? So, anyway, so that's I feel pretty strongly that he is not able to wield those elements of the power of the ruling ring, that power is not accessible by him just because he happens to be wearing the ruling ring at the time. Therefore, I don't believe that his own will is commanding the ringwraiths in that sense. I do think that, especially when he draws his sword, they are daunted by him to some extent. He is fighting back, not just physically with the sword, but with his will to resist them. Which Gandalf is going to be talking about, his will to resist there as well being important. So those things, I think, are what is really important there with the ringwraiths, not just not the power of the ring itself. But I think it's a really good question. That was then on to the other part of Diedelbaum's question: did Frodo's cry of Elbereth hurt the ringwraiths more because he was wearing the ruling ring as he shouted her name? No, that that actually I feel even more strongly about, actually, because of course the power of Elbereth, which I is it, as we've said, it's a little hard to distinguish. Is this elvish magic, right, that is being evoked through Frodo's words, part of the blessing that Gildor placed upon him, right? Or is this Elbereth herself intervening in response to that? And personally, I kind of think it's sort of both, actually, that he cries out, Elbereth Gilthoniel. I think that that's Gildor's blessing, that something leads him to cry out, Elbereth Gilthoniel, and I think that what leads him to cry out, Elbereth Gilthoniel is Gildor's blessing. But I don't think it's just Gildor's blessing that, scatters the ringwraiths. I think that that's the intervention of Elbereth, who is responding, who hears when her name is called there. Therefore, in either case, whether we're talking about the power of Gildor's blessing or we're talking about the power of Elbereth intervening on Frodo's behalf, neither one of those things would be particularly cooperative with the power of the ruling ring, right? The power of Sauron, the power which is placed in the ring, is that power to dominate the will of others, right? And what he's doing there is almost the opposite, right? It's almost the reverse, really, because his own will is scarcely engaged, right? He doesn't even sort of realize that he's saying anything. So yeah, there's an almost kind of self-abandonment, right, to Frodo's cry and what happens there, which again seems very un-Ring of Power-ish. So even apart from the fact that in principle, those two things, the call of Elbereth, the cry of supplication to Elbereth, of praise and supplication to Elbereth, and the power to dominate from the ruling ring. Not only are they pointed in different directions in general, that is like being on opposite sides of things, right? And so probably not in for constructive interference here, right? But nevertheless, I think it's also pretty clear that they're moving directly in the opposite directions in their sort of themes and trends there, right? Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay, and yeah, good. But so I don't think that's crazy. It's a good question, Dieterbaum. I was glad to talk about it. All right, and okay, this is a longish one, but Mike, this is a really great observation, and I've got a little follow up to this as well. Then we're totally back on track. Okay. Given the knowledge available to him and the resources at hand, did the Witch King make any tactical blunders in his tracking down and pursuit of Baggins? And then he's a number of points. 1. Initially, given more or less only Baggins and Shire and Oliveriador to search within, I think he pulled off a masterful search program. Agreed. We talked about this a long time back. The degree of difficulty of what the Ringwraiths had to accomplish was super high. I mean, if you're given only those 2 pieces of information and an entire, large countryside to search, that they found it within only a matter of months, kind of nearly miraculous, actually. Great job, Witch King. The attack at Crickhollow was only partially successful, but I can't imagine what else he could have tried, given what he knew and didn't know about hobbits and the movement of Baggins. The pursuit through the Shire was, by chance, thwarted by high elves. What you gonna do? Right? Exactly. It's not their fault. The pursuit out of the Shire was hindered by Bombadil. Again, what you gonna do? The plan in Bree should have worked. This will be a common refrain. The attack on Weathertop should have worked. First of all, the extended spiritual attack should have worked. Secondly, the in-person attack/stabbing should have worked. Elbereth was outside their estimation, as was, I suspect, Aragorn in his counterattack song. Given how badly they were unexpectedly routed from Weathertop, could the pursuit to Rivendell have been carried out any differently? It should have worked. I think there's just one spot where the Witch King made a mistake, sending 4 of his fellows off after Gandalf after their light show on Weathertop. I think this was a mistake and he should have known better and kept the band together. But otherwise, I don't know that he made any errors. He did a pretty good job and was mainly defeated by incomplete knowledge rather than any flaws in his plans. Exactly. Yes, exactly. I agree. In fact, Mike, not only do I agree with all of those points, I disagree with the one criticism that you made, actually. I don't see what else the Witch King could have done with Gandalf, right? Gandalf just fought off all 9 of them successfully, right? He was besieged on Weathertop and fought them off. So what are they going to do? Ignore him, right? If they don't pursue him, what's Gandalf going to do? Keep running? For what? No, he's going to circle back, right? They've got to keep, they are motivated, right? The Witch King seems to be calculating, and I think correctly, right, that the last thing he wants is for Gandalf to get connected with the ring, right? Gandalf's a threat. Clearly Gandalf's a threat to the Ringwraiths. So they have got to keep Gandalf away from the hobbits. Neither the hobbits and Strider nor Gandalf know where the other one are, right? But the Ringwraiths know both. The Ringwraiths know the general position. They're not 100% sure at that point. Like at the time, when the Strider and the hobbits are still in the middle of the marshes, right? While Gandalf is up on Weathertop. But they know generally, right? They know that that the hobbits are between Bree and Weathertop. They don't know exactly where they are because they can't follow directly in Aragorn's footsteps through the marshes, right? Because he successfully lost them for the moment, but they know the area. So as far as the Ringwraiths know, they could be any minute, right? There's Gandalf on Weathertop. Strider and the hobbits could be right around the corner for all they know, right? They have got to get Gandalf out of there, and they've got to keep him away, or else they're going to make their lives super difficult, right? Gandalf could sling the ring bearer on that super fast horse of his, and then what are they going to do, right? And they're completely hosed. So no, they've got to keep Gandalf under control and out of the way. So you've got to send somebody off to chase him, or else he's going to come and loop around and continue to make your life a misery, right? As if your life as a Ringwraith isn't already a misery, but even more miserable than the average day for a Ringwraith, right? But you've got to send a few. I mean, again, this is Gandalf who just fought off all 9 of you, right? So, like, what are you going to send? 1, right? What's Gandalf going to do, right? Gandalf going to turn around and unleash the sheaf of lightning or something, right? So no. So he sends 4, which I would suppose to be what he calculates to be what it's needed to get the job done, right? To chase Gandalf off. So again, I don't see how he could have done anything differently there either. Had he sent fewer or had he sent none, then Gandalf would have been on the loose and presumably would have been there. So like just as Strider's like, oh man, the ring wraiths are going to be waiting for us at the bridge, right? The ring wraiths would be like, oh man, Gandalf's going to be waiting for us at the bridge, right? Which is very likely what Gandalf would have done. He probably would have ridden up and down the road, right? Looking really fast on Shadowfax, looking for them, knowing that they're somewhere around there. Remember, he's heard from Butterbur that they left the inn. So he knows too that they're in the area. He especially after the attack on Weathertop, he knows less than the Ringwraiths do about their 2 relative positions. But anyway, yeah. So I guess I don't see anything. I think that the Witch King gets an A for effort all the way through. I mean, I don't know what he could have done differently. But I know that this kind of the risk that this line of thought runs, I think, and really the risk that our discussions of the last several sessions in general have run the risk of doing, is making the Nazgûl sound completely, even ridiculously impotent. Right? Like they're just useless and helpless, fragile little flowers, right? Who have nightmares of running into hobbits and being chased around by them, right? Whereas, perhaps our discussions have undermined your sense of the Nazgûl as Sauron's most terrible servants. As I was on the bus home from LA, I received this really funny pair of tweets. The first one went like this: my view of the Nazgûl before this class, and of course is this picture of Godzilla wrecking the city, right? And then my view of the Nazgûl after this class, and it's an adorable little mouse, right? Looking really scared and nervous. And I, I understand, Todd, how you might come away with that. It's not exactly the message that I'm trying to convey here. So let me explain here. Let me try to back up a little bit. So going back to Mike's list here. Mike, I was really glad that you put together this list, because one of the things that this really helps to show, right, is what is the pattern here. At the end of the day, the pattern is not, to me, what is most valuable in seeing wherein the struggles of the Nazgûl lay, right? One of the great benefits to me of seeing that is not to reduce the power of the Nazgûl in my mind, but to show the real pattern here. As I was saying about the Witch King before, and the attack in the Dell, if you see the Nazgûl as like any minute they could just come in and there's nobody, they could just slaughter everybody and there's nothing anybody could do to stop them. If you have that view of the Nazgûl, if that's your understanding of the situation, then it looks like the purest incompetence, right? For them to miss the ring, especially when he's right there, right? Like, okay, I don't care if Strider has fiery pointed sticks, right? Backhand him, take the ring, and go, right? I mean, why didn't he do that? And again, if the answer is that he couldn't, it really does change things, and it's not just any reason, right? They're not, in fact, little mice scared of everything. They are being thwarted, and gosh, Mike, when you put it all together like this, like you've done, it begins to kind of look like a conspiracy, doesn't it? When you put on the when you put on this, when you look at this whole list, you begin to see what exactly has been happening in order to preserve them. And I'd even add some others here, right? They would have caught him at Bag End, right? Despite the completely inadequate lack of, directions and street address and everything, they actually tracked Frodo in the ring to his front door, right? They tracked him down to his house and missed him by minutes, right? Not even hours, minutes. They missed him, right? So they found him, barely missed him, right? Get thwarted at Crick Hollow, and remember, that only happened because they were, able to escape and get there and get out faster than the Nazgûl had thought, right? Because again, by minutes they got onto the ferry just in time, right? So there's all these near misses, right? Again, their failure at Crick Hollow, he was already gone, and then the resistance by the hobbits there. The very coincidental, right, thwarting by the High Elves, that being held in shelter by Tom Bombadil, thus depriving them of knowing where did he go, right? And they can't find him, and they can't do anything about him while he's there, right? The way that the meeting with Strider unexpectedly thwarts the attack in Bree. They would never have done that. They would never have thought to let's hang out, let's sit up in the parlor all night and not go to our bedrooms, right? That wouldn't have happened had it not been for Strider. How are they supposed to be able to anticipate that, right? And then, of course, the way, again, thanks to Strider, the way that the attack under Weathertop is foiled, as we've discussed quite a bit, right? And then the Elbereth intervention. You just look at one thing after another, right, that has intervened to make them almost catch him, but not quite. He has continued to escape their grasp. And I think, again, when you begin to look at the patterns of chance and coincidence and unexpected interventions that have been coming in on the Hobbit side and preventing the Nazgûl from fulfilling this task that they seem to be doing he seemed to have a pretty good handle on, right? Though it's difficult, again, as we've been seeing, what they're trying to do is not easy, and yet he would have been able to do it, it seems, right? Except for the fact that it just kind of never worked out. And that seems to me to be an intervention, right? We can kind of see a pattern here, I think. As Gandalf might say, there is some other power at work here, and that's made pretty much explicit by Gildor, right? Gildor sees it right away. In this meeting, there may be more than chance, he says to Frodo, which for an elf counts as a heavy hint. It might seem kind of elusive, but still, he was hinting fairly heavily. So anyway, I that seems to me the overall pattern. Again, the point is not that the Nazgûl are totally incompetent. Indeed, the when you look at it closely, the opposite picture emerges. You do get a respect, not in my you're right, Bombadil also hints at the intervention of Providence on the Hobbit's part in his coming in at that moment to save them from Old Man Willow as well, right? So I think that seems to me pretty clear when we look at the overall pattern. Again, not that the Nazgûl are doing a terrible job. They're not doing a terrible job. They do face a great deal of resistance. And I do think it's appropriate not for us to think less of the Nazgûl, but for us to think more of the Shire and Bree and the Hobbits and of Aragorn, right? And, of course, the elves and, Elbereth. But I think it's fairly clear, and Gandalf is going to suggest this. Gandalf is himself going to refer to this later on. if we think that like, oh man, this should be so easy for them, right? Why are they screwing it up? We're misunderstanding. We are underestimating the resistance that they were facing and which they've been overcoming, almost overcoming, right? At least persevering through pretty admirably, if you find their activity admirable, right? But I think they are doing the best they can do, right? But they have been thwarted again and again by things outside their control. So again, I think that a relatively clear picture emerges. Now, Corey Schwab says, the near mist I find hardest to understand is Buckleberry Ferry. Yeah, well, I mean, we don't get a kind of direct intervention with that one. I mean, that's just timing, right? I mean, he showed up just too late to catch them at the ferry. One question, of course, is why. Let's think about that one for a second. Buckleberry Ferry. I wonder. You're the Nazgûl, right? You've lost them. You don't know where they are. You know they're around, right? Again, that shortcut, right? They took one of those shortcuts that they do, and so they're somewhere in the wild. You know they're coming. You know which direction they're headed. You know that but you don't know exactly where they are, right? So you talk to folks like Farmer Maggot, and you try to get them to think on them when they come through and stuff. But what's the main thing you do? Guard the bridge, right? I think that, up by the bridge was probably full of Nazgûl, right? Just like the last bridge was before the Elfstone was, maybe accidentally dropped on it. They go to the choke point, right? They've got to cross this river, and here's this bridge, right? So JJ asks, did they even know about the ferry? And that's my question too. We know they're not big on water crossing. That's not a favorite thing of theirs. Would the little boat ferry that the hobbits use be? I gotta think that their assumption, they might perhaps have erred, maybe, in making the assumption that if they're going to cross the river, they've got to go to the bridge, right? That's also where the road goes, right? So maybe they were all cunningly. I assume that that's where they went, right? That they were up by the bridge, lying in wait there for Frodo and them to cross the river. They've got them, right? They can't leave the Shire, except they kind of did, right? Anyway, yeah, but they clearly are patrolling as well up, and that's why they got down to Farmer Maggot's, right? And that's why they do end up there, right? But they get there just too late. And Matt, I agree also, the fog that night, right? The thick fog that night, cloaking their movements and dampening all senses, including smell, making them and their horses move more slowly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, conditions were not good for pursuing hobbits by night on that situation. At least, again, for their horses, who are the ones doing the seeing here. So there's all kinds of reasons to. I think they were probably, had things pretty well under control, or thought that they had things pretty well under control, right, in that situation. But then here, the hobbits escape on this little boat, and again, only just in time. They look back, and there's a Black Rider on the landing stage, right? Only a couple minutes behind them in their departure there. So, anyway, I think it's. When you put all this stuff together, it is, in the end, I think, fairly suspicious, right? It does begin to look like a conspiracy. Frodo does not feel like he is leading a charmed life, right? He does not feel that he is not aware of, some other power at work to protect him and guide him. But when you step back and look at it, that's kind of a picture we begin to see, don't we? Anyway, it's all in Boethius. Erocab, I totally agree. So, thanks for that. Now, let us move forward. Back to the text. Okay. And yeah, fourth thought was, you're right that Gandalf basically told him something like that back in chapter 2, right? That some other power was at work. But A, Gandalf was pretty elliptical about that. And secondly, there were a lot of things that Gandalf told him that he didn't fully process until later on. That's what happens when you get hit with a whole bunch of exposition like that. Right. Anyway, cool. All right, let's move forward. So they just found the Elf Stone. That's where we got to last time. At once they went on again. They crossed the bridge in safety, hearing no sound but the water swirling against its 3 great arches. A mile further on, they came to a narrow ravine that led away northwards through the steep lands through the steep lands on the left of the road. Here Strider turned aside, and soon they were lost in a somber country of dark trees, winding among the feet of sullen hills. The hobbits were glad to leave the cheerless lands and the perilous road behind them, but this new country seemed threatening and unfriendly. As they went forward, the hills about them steadily rose. Here and there, upon heights and ridges, they caught glimpses of ancient walls of stone and the ruins of towers. They had an ominous look. Frodo, who was not walking, had time to gaze ahead and to think. He recalled Bilbo's account of his journey and the threatening towers on the hills north of the road, in the country near the Troll's Wood, where his first serious adventure had happened. Frodo guessed that they were now in the same region, and wondered if by chance they would pass near the spot. All right, so this area that they travel, so they cross on the road, they stay on the road for a little bit, right? And then they head off the road again to the north. So here's Strider having passed the first dangerous choke point, right, which is unexpectedly to him clear of Nazgûl, right, who he thinks should be guarding it, or would probably be guarding it, right, but they're not, and there's an elf stone there in the mud in the middle of the road. So having gotten clear, he's now hitting the woods again, right, so that they will hopefully remain concealed and not found by the Nazgûl here. I love the somber country of dark trees winding among the feet of sullen hills. The adjectives that are given to the landscape here, which seems to be, I think, a projection, right? Probably, at least in part. I'm not saying that hills can't be sullen on their own. That seems, I suppose, possible. But it seems that the somberness of the country, the somber country of dark trees and along the feet of sullen hills, right, gives, I think, a pretty good glimpse into the Hobbit's frame of mind, right? The land here feels daunting, right? It feels even hostile. It feels sullen is really interesting, right? Like these hills are like sitting there staring at them sulkily. There's this, not a hostility. They don't feel like, it's not like the hills are angry or violent or anything like that, right? No stone giants are chucking rocks at them or anything of the sort. And yet, they have this general sense of this land itself is unfriendly to us, right? Yeah. And Belongspond, you're absolutely right. Frodo is in a great deal better shape here than the movies portray, right? He is not a sort of gasping, mostly comatose figure, right? He's still in reasonably good shape. Remember that his arm was feeling dead, and the sense of deadly chill was moving down his side. But when he received the treatment, right, Aragorn's treatment, especially the Athelas and the singing, right, and the call of a Strider, as we saw before, then anyway, that's it lessened, right? The chill left his side, though it did come back later on, and he didn't say anything about it, right? Gil Gunther, he's definitely ambulatory and conscious, right? He's able to interact with them. Mad Violinist, I agree. Tolkien does, in general, give the land he often tends to give the land a certain degree of personality, right? Even a sense of sort of attitude, right? I see Luke was suggesting that this is obviously North Dakota, right? I see several of you thinking of places where you've seen land that kind of looks like this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so now let's keep going. The hobbits were glad to leave the cheerless lands and perilous road, right? So the lands they've passed out of were cheerless, right? But they've transitioned from notice that there is a kind of progression here as they move from the lands between Bree, the lands around Weathertop, right between Bree and the river, are described as cheerless. Like, so they weren't happy lands, right? Whereas given that sort of a negative description, right? Whereas this land is more hostile, right? Threatening and unfriendly, right? It has a little more personality, certainly a more negative personality, right? And the hills are steadily rising around them. Here and there upon heights and ridges they caught glimpses of ancient walls of stone and the ruins of towers. They had an ominous look. And again, based on the maps, it's pretty clear that these ruins of towers and ancient walls of stone belong to Rhudaur. So we have this ominous look. Again, how... And this, of course, we've also seen. We saw this in the landscape description of this same area in The Hobbit, where it describes the ruins that you can see that look like they were made by wicked people, right? The ruins have their own sense of their own personality, their own feeling there, like the landscape. Yeah. So Frodo is thinking about Bilbo and his description of the threatening towers on the hills north of the road. Frodo guesses they're in the area where Bilbo met the trolls, which Frodo calls Bilbo's first serious adventure, right? Where his first serious adventure had happened. And that's an interesting recollection for Frodo at this point. First of all, again, it does show us Frodo's state, right? Not only is he not comatose, he's able to reflect back on Bilbo's stories and do at least a little bit, I would say, maybe of sort of comparison and contrast, right? Bilbo didn't have his first serious adventure until he hit this spot, right? Compare that with Frodo's experience. Frodo was having serious adventures in the Shire itself, right? I mean, he was that close to being captured by a ringwraith, and then instead he comes across, Noldor wandering in the Shire and is taken in by them and spends the night with the elves, right? That by itself is a pretty serious adventure, honestly, right? And then the near escape at the ferry, and then of course the whole adventure in the Old Forest. That was a pretty serious adventure too. The adventure with Old Man Willow, and then Tom Bombadil, and then the Barrow-wights, right? Frodo has had, and then needless to say, the adventure, Bree itself with the break-in and the thieving of the ponies and everything, right? And that was a serious adventure. Frodo's had like 5-6 serious adventures by the time he gets to this point. In context, I kind of look at Frodo's recollection of Bilbo's experience as being, at least to some extent, wistful on Frodo's part, right? He recalls the descriptions that Bilbo wrote of the towers. What is he called? The threatening towers on the hills north of the road, right? He recognizes that and realizes, like, but this is probably near the spot of Bilbo's adventure with the trolls, right? And yet how different, is this recalling in some way like a childhood fantasy that Bilbo had, or that Frodo had, of following in Bilbo's footsteps, of going to see himself those places that he's heard about so many times before. And now he gets here, and instead of having that experience, right, of the Shire hobbit who is now among the, there in the troll shaws and seeing all this stuff for the first time and being like, oh, this is where Bilbo had a real adventure, right? Now he's like, oh, please, right? Man, I've had adventures coming out my ears up to this point, and of a very, very serious kind indeed, right? So it's interesting that his recollection, we don't see him explicitly comparing and contrasting, right? But clearly if he did, it sort of invites us to compare and contrast, and we can see how easy Bilbo's trip was in comparison. I mean, even the adventure with the trolls itself, which is kind of serious. We met 3, man-eating trolls who did in fact come quite close to eating all the dwarves and the hobbit, right? So it was a close scrape with death and all that kind of thing. It was legitimate in that sense. And yet, mild compared to most of Frodo's adventures, right? Yes, the dwarves were popped into sacks by the trolls, but Merry and Pippin were actually eaten by a tree, right? Not just captured, but actually sort of eaten, right? And then obviously like the barrow, right, with the barrow wight, that was way worse that was a much bigger pickle than Bilbo was in, even with the trolls, right? And then of course the attack on the dell under Weathertop. Frodo has seen many, many times more danger than Bilbo saw, even counting the troll adventure, which Frodo hasn't even gotten to yet, right? So yep, it's and again, it's interesting to me that we don't see Frodo coming to any conclusions of that kind. But don't you get the sense in that last sentence, Frodo guessed that they were now in the same region, and he wondered if by chance they would pass near the spot. It's almost like he's hoping they will, that it would be a kind of refreshment, instead of being like, oh, this is where that hideous, like, terrifying adventure that Bilbo described took place. Instead, it'll be like, oh, it'll be nice to like do some tourism instead of like, being afraid for my life all the time. Bilbo's adventure now, by contrast, seems like again like a fun outing. Instead of let's lighten the mood a little bit from Frodo's normal life here. Yeah. Let's see. Let's keep going. Who lives in this land? He asked. And who built these towers? Is this troll country? No, said Strider. Trolls do not build. No one lives in this land. Men once dwelt here, ages ago, but none remain now. They became an evil people, as legends tell, for they fell under the shadow of Angmar, but all were destroyed in the war that brought the North Kingdom to its end. But that is now so long ago that the hills have forgotten them, though a shadow still lies on the land. Where did you learn such tales, if all the land is empty and forgetful? Asked Peregrine. The birds and beasts do not tell tales of that sort. The heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past, said Strider, and many more things than I can tell are remembered in Rivendell. Have you often been to Rivendell? Said Frodo. I have, said Strider. I dwelt there once, and still I return when I may. There my heart is, but it is not my fate to sit in peace, even in the fair house of Elrond. Strider says no in response to his 3 questions, right? And it seems that he takes Frodo's question to be did trolls build those towers, right? Who built these towers? Is this troll country? He seems to sort of combine these two things and answers as if Frodo had asked, did trolls build those, right? No, they didn't. Trolls don't build. And no one lives in this land. And then he does not use the name Rudauer, but that is who he is clearly describing, I think, right? They were destroyed in the war that brought the North Kingdom to its end. They were an evil people. They became an evil people, rather. Yeah, and Emma Thorne, you're right. They do not seem to have a lot of ancient history books in the Shire, right? Not much is known of this kind of thing. And notice that they are surprised. Pippin, anyway, or Peregrine, I should say, as he is named here, is wondering where he learned tales like this, right? The birds and beasts do not tell tales of that sort, he says. And that's an interesting thing for him to have said, right? On the one hand, I doubt that he's speaking from personal experience, right? Any more than Bungo Baggins was speaking from personal experience about dragons and their ways, right? So I don't think Pippin's like, of all the stories I've heard, all the tales I have heard birds and beasts tell, I've never heard any of them who told stories like that. I don't think so. I think that he's referring to what he is guessing about Strider, right? Who is Strider? As far as he knows, he's, a vagabond who has wandered around in the wilderness, right? So the only source of lore he could have, he's what? He can't have had much book learning, Strider, right? Are you kidding? He's practically a recluse. He lives out in the wilderness, wandering around, right? That he knows a lot about finding paths in the wilderness, quite likely, right? That he could be a good hunter, okay. He said that he was, and that's easy to believe, right? And yet, this is not the kind of thing, right? What he's doing now is not the kind of thing that Pippin would have expected. So when Pippin says the birds and beasts do not tell tales of that sort, he's betraying the assumptions, I think, that he has made about Aragorn, right? Okay, you're a guy from the wilderness. Doubtless you know birds and beasts really well, right? But they didn't tell you these stories. Where did you hear them? And then he... Luke says it's funny that Pippin is then the one who's going to get into Arnorian history in the appendices. Yeah, it is, right? Pippin's going to learn some of this lore later on. Did Rudauer predate the first hobbits moving west of the Misty Mountains? Predate... Yeah, I mean, the Shire is colonized... long after, obviously, the formation of the North Kingdom, and I believe after the Civil Wars. We know that the hobbits were there and sent some archers to the last battle, right, at Fornost. So the Arnorian Civil War was contemporary with the hobbits, right? Here's the thing that is kind of shocking to me. Strider gives two answers to the question, where did you learn such tales, right? And his response is, the heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past, and many more things are remembered in Rivendell. So the answer which I might have expected to come first, where did you learn such tales, if all the land is empty and forgetful? The answer I might have expected was, did you forget about Rivendell? Right? Yeah, Rivendell, doofus. Where do you think I learned it? Right? But that's not what he leads with. What he leads with is, the heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past. That's a pretty heavy hint. Notice he's not explicitly saying, I'm the heir of Elendil here, right? He doesn't reveal himself completely, but it's a pretty heavy hint, right? Good. Galandar and Erecheb are looking up the dates in the appendix for me. Yeah, the Shire is colonized well after the split, the three-way split of Arnor into Rhudaur and Cardolan and Arthedain. Good, yeah, well, Luke was just looking that up too. Well after that, but still more than 300 years, almost 400 years prior to the fall of Fornost, right? So they will have been around during the evil years of Rhudaur, but keep in mind they're pretty far away, right? There's no reason to think that the Shire was very tightly connected to the the Arnorian Civil War, really. From this speech, Frodo, at least, is not going to track with the fact that Strider is one of the people of the Old Kings, right? He's going to still be surprised when Gandalf springs that on him in Rivendell in the next chapter. And that's strange, a little bit strange to me, right? I mean, after all, he seems like a pretty big tell here, right? The heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past. Now, they could just be his source of information, right? Okay, so there are people of the Old Kings, and I learned it from them. If that's what they conclude, and I can't see any other way that they interpreted that. I mean, he says, the heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past in response to where did you learn such tales, right? So the only way that I think they could emerge from that comment, not understanding that he was one of the Dunedain himself, is that they are assuming that the heirs of Elendil must be his source of information, which I think suggests how unkingly Strider seems to them, right? It points to their assumptions. If they have whatever their mental picture might be of the people of the Old Kings, it apparently does not match Strider, right? And again, the very kind of profiling, as Sweet Jack was saying, that Pippin seems to be doing here, right? The assumptions that he makes about rangers, that birds and beasts would be the source of their information. He's surprised that he has that much book learning. Exactly as James Liebeck says, as Frodo is going to say later on, I thought he was only a ranger, right? The only there is telling. And Pippin seems to be feeling the only as well, right? Such that when Strider alludes to the heirs of Elendil, instead of anyone apparently saying, hey, you're one of the heirs of Elendil? That's awesome, right? They don't say that at all. Instead, their response seems to be, oh, you learned it from the heirs of Elendil, huh? Wow. I'm surprised they would tell you, right? I mean, they don't say that bit. But again, obviously, this is not what they would expect that to look like. Now, D. Schwab is asking, do they know who the heirs of Elendil are? Frodo seems to know something of them, again, as he will reveal in his conversation with Gandalf, right? Cecilia is wondering the same thing, and yeah, it is a good question. Remember, they didn't know who Gilgalad was, so are they up on Elendil, right? Do they know anything about the people of the Old Kings? I don't know, but it does seem that Frodo clearly knows something, right? Yeah, exactly, Boomful. The Rangers, I mean, if there are multiple Rangers, right, they're all apparently homeless, rascally vagabonds, right? This does not suggest exalted lineage, it seems to them. Catriona says, didn't Aragorn largely declare who he was in Bree when Frodo got Gandalf's letter with the All That Is Gold poem? He said his real name, that he was Aragorn, son of Aragorn. He did come off differently. He dropped the local accent, right, and the rascally act, but he didn't explicitly identify himself as, a Númenorian or as one of the people of the Old Kings or anything. Just that he was Aragorn and Gandalf's friend. And then, of course, there was Bilbo's poem, which if they, gave a little bit of thought to, might have suggested that he was one of the people of the Old King, but, apparently they didn't really process that. I guess the hobbits don't pay quite enough attention to the poetry either. Yeah. Matt is thinking that this sounds like a later addition to the text by Findegil, the King's writer. Citing especially... Matt, I like that theory. Where did you learn such tales if all the land is empty and forgetful? Asked Peregrine. The birds and beasts do not tell tales of that sort. Matt's argument is that the diction there is kind of elevated, and the use of Peregrine instead of Pippin, which a couple of you noticed, is also sort of interesting, right? That Findegil, the King's writer of Gondor, might have inserted this, right? And you can tell his tone, right? Which is not like Frodo's. And also the naming of him as Peregrine is a giveaway, right? Because of course Findegil, the King's writer, wouldn't call him Pippin. Yeah. And the heirs of Elendil do not forget all things past. So, the idea that he's writing, Findegil, King's writer, is writing back the revelation of the kingliness of Aragorn for those who have eyes to see, right, all the way back through. Seems plausible. But anyway, I agree that even if we don't think about exactly, Valori, it's a Gondorian retcon. Yeah. But even if we don't think about it that way, that's, of course, that I really like that theory, and I think that works really well. But again, even just thinking about this in the context of everything that we know here, we can see why. It's all about their presumptions, right? It's all about the assumptions they make, not processing all that is gold does not glitter, right? As Galandar says, not sure what exactly the Hobbit concept of a king of men would be at this point, but it certainly would not be anything like Strider. Yeah, remember Butterbur's surprise, right? Exactly. Frodo asks us if he's often been to Rivendell. I have. I dwelt there once, and still I return when I may. There my heart is. But it is not my fate to sit in peace, even in the fair house of Elrond. There my heart is. We have the first overt, semi-overt reference, right? It's cute, very indirect, right? My question is not what he's referring to. I think I get that. But why he says it? Once again, we can see this pattern that we've seen before with Strider, right? Doing this weird combination of neither revealing very much nor actually saying anything, right? He's still playing things really close to the vest, and yet he's not saying nothing. Strider, if you want to give them no clear information about your love life, that end would be better served by saying nothing at all rather than dropping hints, right? And instead, he drops hints. There my heart is. Okay. All right. Why does he say that? because he's trying to convey to them, I'm not just... So he gives them two reasons to think that he is not only casually connected with Rivendell, right? Have I often been to Rivendell, right? Yeah. No, I know where it is, right? He gives two pieces of information to suggest his much more intimate connection with Rivendell, right? I used to live there, right? First. Secondly, there my heart is, right? I used to live there, and I'm still closely connected to it, right? I wish I could stay there all the time. I still visit whenever I can, and I wish I could retire there permanently, right? Yeah. Karita says a bunch of strange hobbits are probably not the best people to pour your heart out to, but his options are limited at the moment, right? I really like the I like the observation Valori was saying. He hasn't really talked to other people in a while, right? Yeah, maybe. Maybe this is, there is an impulse that he has here to share, right? That this is him kind of reciprocating trust to some extent. I mean, remember, the trust has been kind of going one way, in a sense, right? He's had to ask them to trust him. They've had to put a great deal of trust in him. And he's not, they're not equal, right? There's not the same kind of, he can't show them trust back. Maybe this is kind of a small gesture in that direction, perhaps. Yeah. But it is kind of encouraging, right? Encouraging in the sense that, because, have you often been to Rivendell? One way possibly to paraphrase that question is, you do really know where you're going, don't you? You are going to be able to find this place, right? And his response is kind of encouraging along those lines, right? Oh yeah, hey, I am all about Rivendell, right? I am absolutely, yeah. Oh, not only do I visit frequently, I used to live there. I still think about it all the time, right? I go back and visit whenever I can. That's very, kind of encouraging if that's what they're asking. I don't think that that's all that's behind Frodo's question. I don't think he's just saying like, dude, are you leading us in a circle or what? Yeah. That's good. Oh, hey, I see Ugly Bob popping in to say hi here. Thanks, Ugly Bob. Thanks for listening. Yeah. And I agree, Evil Dr. Cannon, the context here is of his lore, not his ability to find it. So yeah, no, it's not that I think that that's really like the edge of Frodo's question, right? But again, even the lore thing is has a similar kind of edge, right? Do you really know what you're talking about, right? Like have you taken, have you just had a couple lessons? Like, have you visited Rivendell once and heard somebody tell us? Is this just like something you heard once in a bar at Rivendell? Or like, have you been there often enough to be, like, have you been instructed by Elrond? Have you taken the full master's degree course, at Rivendell or what? Yeah, I don't know, Evil Dr. Cannon, if they're sort of suspecting him of making it up. But again, like, how legit are you? Is again, and they're trying to figure sort of him out. And again, he responds by sort of telling them like, no, I am like hardcore. I'm a matriculated student, right? I am all into to Rivendell, right? You can trust the things that I tell you. And, oh, by the way, I know my way there. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm pausing here to think about Tom's question. Tom says, "There my heart is very interesting. Gandalf says that the way of the ring to my heart is pity. Galadriel says that she does not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you offer. Does Aragorn's love of Arwen help defend him against the ring?" Both Gandalf's heart and Galadriel's heart might, in some circumstances, incline them to take up the ring, right? Aragorn's heart is secure because his heart is at Rivendell, right? He is not currently in custody of his own heart. It's interesting. Yeah, Tom, of course, that makes me want to kind of look up where is that phrase used elsewhere and how. What kind of trends can we see in how people talk about their hearts in this kind of presumably metaphorical way? I don't think that Aragorn's heart has actually been extracted and is in a phylactery at Rivendell, right? So this is plainly metaphorical language that he's using, but so that same kind of metaphorical language would be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, the Mad Violinist is recalling Gandalf saying, "My heart tells me that Gollum will have some part to play before the end." Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, worth looking into more, Tom, I think. It'd be cool. Let's see. What else was I going to say here? Catriona does point out that Strider still underplays his time at Rivendell, right? He does reassure them that he knows Rivendell well, right? I dwelt there once. But Catriona points out there's a pretty big difference between I dwelt there once and I grew up there, right? Which he did, as she points out. Yes, though Catriona, I think that might be as much as to sort of emphasize how far distant he is removed from his childhood there, right? I grew up in rural West Virginia, but when I was in middle school, my parents moved to New Hampshire, so I would look back and say, like, it's not quite, doesn't quite convey things to say, like, I once lived in West Virginia. Like, those were important formative years of my life, and yet I've had a lot of living since then, right? None of which has involved rural West Virginia. So, he has lived away from Rivendell far longer than he was there, even though he did spend some very formative years there. And his heart is now there again, right? But, yeah. And hey, yeah, nothing to... Wheel Rider grew up in Charleston, West Virginia, yeah. I grew up down near Hinton, West Virginia, down in Summers County. And Gelgear, I've been back to West Virginia twice I visited. Anyway, that was fun, actually. But yeah, anyway, so he's, it's sort of distant from him. Yeah. And Evil Dr. Cannon, I do think, again, we do see this impulse to speak elliptically, right? He's not given in too much. Yeah. Oakwig says if I'd stayed in West Virginia, I'd never want for moonshine. Oakwig, I do have to admit, I think of that every time I get to that line. I'm reading The Fellowship of the Ring with my sons. We're listening to it in the car now. And we just got that passage. We just finished chapter 1 this morning. So we just got to the passage about you'll never, if that's where you get your news from, you'll never want for moonshine in the beginning of chapter 2. And it always makes me think of West Virginia when I hear that line. Yeah, cool. But it is not my fate to sit in peace, even in the fair house of Elrond. Notice what he's suggesting here, right? Sorry, saw Karina's comment. Said she once named a beloved stuffed horse Moonshine, and all the adults laughed, and she was confused. Yeah, it's one of those words that you just can't predict, right? As a kid. Anyway, except I, as a kid in West Virginia, learned what it meant as part of like routine safety concerns because wandering in the woods in the mountains near where we lived, I had to be on the lookout not to stumble upon somebody's closely guarded still. But anyway, but that last comment by Strider, it is not my fate to sit in peace even in the fair house of Elrond, right? Again, he's being a bit elliptical, right? He's not being clear about his job. But again, notice what he's doing there. It seems to me, in part, what that does is provide a little context for them to understand, right? So, again, clearly they're profiling him, right? Remember, he elicited that. He plays up to that in Bree, right? So he's introduced to them as Strider, and he's acting up as Strider, the ranger, who probably doesn't know anything more than birds and beasts, right? And now he's explaining a little bit more. But so notice what he's explaining. Here is where my lore came from, right? From Rivendell. And yeah, I've been there. I used to live there, right? My heart is still there. But it is not my fate to sit in peace, even in the fair house of Elrond, right? I have a fate which has driven me out of... So there's a reason I wander. There's a reason I look as shabby as I do, right? There's a reason that I wander, and it's not just because I'm a vagabond by nature, right? Or even by choice. What I'm doing, there's more to it than that, right? And for Thoughtless, I think it means that he cannot long dwell there in peace. It is not my fate to sit in peace, meaning to hang out, right? Like, I don't live there anymore. No, it's not like I was kicked out or anything, right? But rather because I have chosen, like, I am doing what I am doing for a reason, right? It is my fate to do what I am doing. So don't think that just because I look like a vagabond wandering around, just because I look like this shabby ranger, that don't make too many rash assumptions about that. I'm doing this for a reason, right? At first it just looked like maybe a disguise. Now he's suggesting, no, there's purpose to it, right? And yet, I'm giving you glimpses anyway of the whole package, right? I used to live in Rivendell. My heart is still in Rivendell. It is not my fate to sit in peace in Rivendell, and I learned these tales from the heirs of Elendil who don't forget all things past, right? Now, but then he leaves them to put all that together, which they don't, right? Which is fine. Interesting. D. Schwab is thinking that he's insecure, which is possible. You could do a reading of an I almost said immature, which would be strange, but of an insecure Strider who is unsure of himself, who's unsure if he will fulfill the prophecy, right? So, that he has hope, but, doubts. We know that he doubts himself in some sense, right? He's not Isildur, right? He's not as great as his fathers before him. He is very conscious of the fact that he screws up. We've seen him already chiding himself, like coming to Weathertop was a bonehead move, right? He shouldn't have done that. But yeah, now a couple of you, Cecilia and Balangsbond, are thinking about the film version, right, of the like insecure Aragorn, and I think though there's a difference there. I think there's a difference between the film Aragorn and what D. Schwab is suggesting here. The film Aragorn is not just insecure, but has like positively decided not to pursue kingship, right? You know, that's a career path he's turned away from actively, right? And I don't think that that's, I mean, obviously nothing like that has happened. He has not rejected his heritage, which he's done in the films. And I think, and I'm forgetting who said it now. We were talking about this at LA Moot this past weekend. Balangsman, do you remember who said this? Talking about, was it, I think it was in the, was it Cliff in the OneRing.net presentation? Talking about Aragorn and how Aragorn, oh no, it was Morgan in the King Arthur one, where he was talking about this trend in modern depictions about how modern films are so, yeah, Balangsman, I'm right. Okay. Yeah. Morgan Sewell, who gave a really great talk about Arthurian adaptations of the 20th century, and was talking about how one of these major trends in King Arthur versions, 20th century King Arthur stories, is about the rejection of power. Like that modern cinema is super uneasy with the idea of somebody reaching out and taking power. Right. Or worse, seeking it. Right. That if you want a character to be sympathetic, you've got to have him like pushing power away. Right. And Morgan puts up a slide of Viggo Mortensen and gives that as an example there. Yeah, exactly. And Matt's making the distinction between the film version's rejection of power and the book version's, if there is insecurity, it's insecurity born out of him being hard on himself, right? Yeah, exactly. Arden Cran is asking if Aragorn had some prophecy that he specifically would be called on to restore the kingdom. No, it's just there's the hope that it will happen, the restoration of the kingdom, and the sense that Elrond has made a kind of prophecy that when the ring is found, it's all going to kind of come down, right? That the kingdom won't be restored until Isildur's Bane is found, and there's been sort of a chance to, and we do get the Malbeth the Seer lines, which are pretty cryptic and kind of indirect, but they do suggest that it's going to, but it's not like prophesied about him specifically, exactly, right? This precisely. But anyway, there is some general, some sense that this is meant to happen, that now is the time when this must be done, right? His fate, right? I think his fate does lie on him heavily. He knows. Either, and we can hear this in things that Elrond says and in things that Arwen says, both in the appendices, right? If you read the Appendix A story of Aragorn and Arwen, as we will eventually, you can see that there is this sense of like, okay, like fate is coming, like now is the time, right? Either we will live or we will all fall into terrible darkness. Either the kingdom's going to be restored or the last hope is going to crumble. And it's kind of on him, right? Not single-handedly on him, but he I think it's clear to him by this point, now that the ring has been found, it's pretty clear to him that, okay, this is totally happening in my lifetime, right? If the kingdom is going to be restored, shoot, I guess I'm the one who's going to have to do it, right? I do think that Aragorn has had that moment, and as I suggested before, I think that's one small reason at least, why he wants to go to Weathertop, right? To walk in the footsteps of Elendil, to stand where Elendil stood, looking out for Gil-galad, because he knows, like, this, okay, it's on now, right? The Ring of Power is here. I've now started, just as Elendil and Gil-galad from here, from Weathertop, right, from Amon Sul, started off together on their long trek that led to the battle at Dagorlad and the overthrow of Sauron. So I'm doing the same thing, right? So I think he has that sense. Again, it's not that like he personally was prophesied, but rather I think he knows that there are prophecies and there are responsibilities, and he knows now that if it's going to happen, it's going to be him, right? And it's on him to do that. Well, Trifle, I agree. We'll get to these passages and talk about them more when we do. I would argue that Eorwen and Elrond's words both are of the kind that I was just describing. That is that sense of like, now it is in, like, this is happening in your lifetime, like in the lifetime of this person, this is going to come about, right? So it's not exactly meaning like, and you're the destined one to fulfill the prophecy. It's not the same. It's not the same force as that. It's again that sense of like, this needs to happen, right? There will come a time when this will come to a crisis. And then the specific things about him are like, I got the sense that it's now, right? It's going to happen in this kid's lifetime. That is how I understand certainly Elrond's words. But like I said, we'll get around to those actual passages later on. Let's see. You think you disagree? Well, we'll see, Trifle. Again, maybe I'll change my mind by the time we get there. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. 2030. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. It is important, I think, to imagine how daunting it must be to Aragorn to think about this happening in his lifetime. Absolutely. And any doubt that he feels, any uneasiness, any insecurity, as we described, would seem readily explicable by that, right? He knows the significance of the task that lies before him. Is he up to it or not, right? I think he has his doubts about that. There are certainly moments when he has his doubts, or at least wonders if he's falling short, right? All right. Well, I didn't mean to talk about that for so long. Let's do one more. Okay, I'm in the middle of saying, let's do one more quickly, and then I'm like, oh, this is a really long one. That's okay. It's all description. No, let's not. This is about Frodo's dreams. No, this is not going to be quick. Let's save this one. Let's save this one for next week. We'll start with the invasion of Frodo's dreams. Because, yeah, exactly, Tarlonio. I'd almost forgotten. I just kind of glanced down, and I'm like, oh, it's mostly description. No, we can't talk about dreams quickly. Okay, so we'll come back to that next week. Thanks, everybody, for another fun discussion tonight. We're going to do our field trip now, where we're going to be going through this same land. We're going to look at the depiction of the last bridge in LOTRO, and then we're going to start looking, we're going to cross into this sullen, unfriendly landscape and look about us here and see what we can find. So I'm going to switch over I'm going to turn off Twitter and switch over to Twitch now. Thanks, everybody, for joining us there. Feel free to join us at twitch.tv/SignumU. And I'll see you guys. All right. And now
good evening, everybody.
Good evening. All right. Okay, let's see. And Trifle is asking, a question about the field trip. What level would I suggest to come along? So we're on Crick Hollow tonight. You're level 25. Will you die painfully if you try to come along? If you're 25, we can probably keep people alive, right?
As long as we're also watching for deer, because the deer start to aggro when we get to the troll shaws.
Well, you can't ever trust those deer. I mean, that's established.
I don't know. Did you see the clip that we put up of the Girls of Mythgard thing that we did?
Oh, the moose thing? Oh, I laughed so hard. Oh, my goodness. That was incredible.
Let me never take for granted aggressive
just
wildlife
like
again.
the massacre, right? As this moose comes leaping over and then just starts tossing hobbits here and there. It was
None of it saw us coming.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're not going to stick to the road Fourth Dauntless, but we should. I think that the level difference will probably not be so great that they'll get like insta killed if we. I think we can probably protect them.
Probably. Your mileage may vary.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so should we head on up there?
Okay. Yes.
So, were we doing Oscaroth and then riding out?
Yes. Let's do Oscar Ruth and then ride from there. That makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, the more I'm looking at what Strider's saying when he's saying these things, like my heart lies there or something like that, I get the feeling he's just been out in the wild by himself, talking to himself for so long that he just can't turn it off. I've seen so many Aragorn lines where I just imagine him pausing and going, did I say that out loud?
Maybe. I wonder. I wonder how much time he really does spend alone. It's possible that he spends quite a bit of time alone. But I wonder. I wonder if he kind of comes to that kind of point. We just saw him at Bree. Now, of course, he's not like hanging out with folks. That we know that he does, right? Remember Butterbur saying that, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has a mind. Like sometimes he joins the company and
you're right. I forgot the bit. He's just hanging out in the inn for forever.
Right, but again, you clearly don't get the sense that he's. It's not like they greet him like Norm at Cheers when he comes into the Prancing Pony, right? So
Aragorn!
it's not that kind of relationship that he has, but I don't know. I'm not sure. It doesn't feel quite right to me, but I have nothing to really point to. That is, it doesn't feel quite right to me that Aragorn would be like actively pining, or sort of starved for human contact. Yeah, that's interesting. Blue Wizard was just saying in the Twitch chat that Joyce found Bill Ferny's line about him finally finding a friend to be closer to the mark than he realizes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Greetings.
It's true. Found some friends at last. Now, of course, it's...
Erica makes a good point. He wears so many different masks and different titles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
His Astel Stridal Thoringo.
Yeah, it's true. And so, actually even though he's only hinting indirectly, right, about, there his heart lies. Again, that's not exactly a reviewing statement that he made fully.
Yeah, no, he's vague booking.
Right, but yet, nevertheless, I agree with Aerocab. That is, he's not playing a role there, right?
Yeah.
There he's speaking not as Strider, the rascally ranger, right? There he's not even speaking as like Aragorn, son of Arathorn, chieftain of the Dunedain necessarily. There he's just like speaking as a guy. Right?
There's a bit of pride to that too. It's kind of like, come on, ask me about my girlfriend. Come on, let me tell me honestly how close it is.
I just kind of threw that out there to see if you're interested, if we can have that kind of...
Nobody's talking about girls. Okay, fine. Okay.
Right, exactly. And all the hobbits are like, whoop, no, we've actually... Sam's the only one who's ever had a girlfriend, clearly. Yeah. Well, so, yeah, no, but Luxmont, I agree that, Bill Ferny doesn't know anything, right? This is... But still, the fact that Bill Ferny chooses that to taunt him about is kind of revealing, right?
Yeah. Well, remember, Aragorn's been watching the inn, and Ferny's been watching him the whole time.
Right, exactly. So, that Bill Ferny would choose that particular taunt. I guess we can go, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Here.
Yeah, you could just See Strider internalizing that for a minute and self-doubt again, going, I've adopted so many manners, I don't know how to impersonate me. You know?
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, Catriona, that's it's just wondering about the girlfriend status of the four hobbits. Yes, Frodo is a confirmed Bator, like Bilbo before him. Are Merry and Pippin a bit young for girls? Well,
we don't know that.
We don't know that.
We don't. Hey, it's like I got middle schoolers. That's been going on for depending on the kid. It depends on the kid.
It depends on the kid. Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah, Pippin still might be in his ew girls phase. We don't know.
Right.
It doesn't come up.
It really doesn't. Yeah, and although, it's one thing to say that Pippin's the equivalent of 17 in the sense that he's underage, but, what does even underage mean?
Yeah, we don't know how their pituitary glands act. We don't know any of that.
The fact that hobbits come of age at 33 means that's when they're legally responsible, right?
That's when they can vote for the one candidate for mayor, and
right. That's when they can own land and inherit property,
own land,
and things like that.
Yeah, unless they're a woman or poor.
Right.
I'm assuming. I don't. No, I'm kidding. Actually, no.
Women can inherit.
Created in a delicate. Yeah, no.
Women can inherit. Women can even have authority. They can be in charge. Like Lobelia would have been the.
Yeah, no, it's a much more egalitarian society than I'm painting.
Yeah, but still, it's. But yeah, this doesn't necessarily tell us anything about their psychological maturity or anything.
No, for all we know, they might even do it at the same speed as we do. It's just they're considered not old enough to know their own mind.
Right. I mean, the hobbits in their tweens are called irresponsible, but of course that's an accusation that's been leveled at 20-year-old humans before too.
30-year-olds these days.
Exactly.
You just watch it. Millennials are killing blank. Those are all 30-year-olds.
Right. Right. Yeah, Matt is suggesting that the irresponsible age is sort of akin to people's time at university, Oh,
yeah. The 20s man-child phase of, I'm finally on my own. I'm going to buy a ton of anime.
Right. Or that's a fairly constructive way to misbehave in your college years. Anyway,
it's great. You can't afford drugs.
I suppose that's one way to keep yourself out of trouble. Anyhow, let's look at the bridge. So here we are at the bridge. One of the things that I really admire about this, first of all, it has what looks like a sidewalk, except it doesn't because it dead ends into a pole over there. But whatever. That's not what I meant to say. What I really admire about this is the river, right?
Oh yeah.
It doesn't describe, the book doesn't describe the river as running in a gorge. But what it does sort of suggest here is we know the scale problem, right?
Yes.
The scale problem in LOTRO is, it's hard to convey this sense of distance because the game is, I don't remember exactly, it's 1/10 scale or something like that. So, distances pass really quickly, and so it's hard to get the same impression that the book gives you. Remember what Aragorn says about the river here is that it's impassable except by the bridge for a long way on either side.
We're thinking this is something probably like the size of the Illinois River or something like that. Just this big old wide mass of water kind of thing then.
Right. Except here we see it's pretty narrow, right? Or at least looks narrow here. And of course, in LOTRO, you can swim most places. So swimming across this river is actually not hard, right?
Yeah.
So again, how do they, knowing that by scale they can't make the river look super impassable, or else it's going to be the equivalent of 8 miles across, and it's hard for them to make it genuinely impassable. they do create that impression, I think, by having these like steep gorges on either side. Like when you look north and south of the river here, it does look like, okay, yes, like, you know, you can't just hop from one side of that river to another. Like, this is the only convenient place to cross here. And then, of course, by showing the water rushing beneath the arches, they're not only picking up on the actual description that we just read tonight about those 3 arches, right? Mm-hmm. Which, as we can see, if we can actually get it a little better down.
Yeah, down the side here, I think.
Yeah, to see the...
Yep, 3 arches. Hey, look at that.
And the water foaming right up against them.
The symbol on them.
Yes. Well, I was going to be looking at that next.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but absolutely. All right, so we see them picking up on the description, and so this looks like a fast-running river, and when you're standing here and you're looking at it, you can see the walls of the gorge on the other side, and how violently and swiftly the river is flowing. It gives you the impression of a river that you would really need the bridge to cross, even though
you don't want to cross it with that,
Right, exactly. But yes, anyway, looking at the bridge, we clearly have the Arnorian signs on the bridge. I was going to say that it looks like an Arthedanian bridge, but my suspicion, of course, would be that it would predate that. Right? This was probably an Arnorian bridge before the Civil Wars began. So it has no symbols other than the Scepter of Illuminus and the stars.
Do you remember where we saw the haphazard concrete and rock formation? In
Garth Agarwin, you mean?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, that's exactly right. Also, the filigree on the handrails, which I must point out, I think these might be the first handrails I've seen anywhere in Middle Earth.
Right.
That something we always joke about with elven civilizations. They just don't like it. Yeah, don't these look a bit like our portcullis designs?
Like the portcullises, yeah. Yeah, I agree, which suggests then that not only was Garth Agarwin built up in stages, as a defensive fortification from without, but that there are elements of it anyway which were from old Arnor, right? Mm-hmm. Prior to the time of the Civil War. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I wish more of the Rivendell bridges had guardrails like this, honestly.
I always used to joke that's like, the soothing sounds of the rushing water and the beautiful background music and the crack of breaking ankles.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Catriona is saying she's thought for a while that many of the Rudaran ruins were originally just Arnorian constructions that Rudar took over and redecorated. Yes, in some cases, I think that might be the case. But remember that what we're seeing there is the decay of the decay of their civilization, right? I mean, they don't just take over Arnorian structures. They were making Arnorian structures. They were Arnorian themselves, right? And I think that even the sense of old Rudar, right? Old Rudar as having been a subset of Arnor. This sense that those 3 were like 3 major houses within Arnor, which then claimed the kingship and split apart. So yeah, I mean, but of course, as time goes by, they become more and more evil. These are the hugest versions of those vine decorations we have ever seen.
I think they were also around the arcs for the portcullis in Garth Agarwin. We saw there were vine details almost this big.
Okay, so one of the things that let me go down the corner here.
Oh, there's the benevolent good PR king.
The who?
The statue up there. It's the good side king statues that we saw in Rudar's palace.
Right.
Presumably.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait. Hang on. This is just what I wanted to see. The full, gigantic version of those vine carvings. Okay.
We still don't know what those vines signify, do we?
No, we don't. We've seen them all over the place, and we don't know what they signify. But here at least we can see them clearly. They're so small elsewhere. Like, for instance, with some of them, when we've seen them before, I wasn't even sure whether they were leaves or, like, thorns. Like, it was a little unclear. Now you can see they're obviously leaves, right? That's very clear. And I wasn't even sure in counting them, but now we can clearly count them. There are 1, 2, 3, 4...
5, 6,
7, 8. Is
7.
that a ninth? The one that's like just to the, like by the top railing there, off to the right of the.
I think that's a branch off.
Well, actually, if you look at the one on the left, the symmetrical one to the left, I think
Yes.
it's a little bit more leafish.
Yes.
That would make 9. Which is a little bit, at least that's a like sensible Númenórean number. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if there are 9 leaves, then I suspect that this branch is meant to suggest... Yes. I think that this branch is meant to symbolize the family of Elendil.
Ah.
That's my theory. Family of Elendil. Because notice 2 things, right? Number 1 is that they have the 9 leaves, which would signify the 9 ships that bore them across from Númenor, right?
Yep.
And then you've got the branches of this vine, right? The stem of the vine, which splits off, right? There are these 2 offshoots of the main vine, which would then be Isildur and Anarion, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking, seeing it more clearly here, I think that that's probably what it is. I think that that's meant, so like the scepter is meant to depict more sort of abstractly the authority of the realm of Arnor, right? And of the Númenóreans in general. Whereas the vines are more personal, right? Representing like the family and the family history, as it were, of Elendil's family.
It's almost like Tree of Jesse kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the Tree of Elendil. Well, sort of, not tree, vine, but whatever. Yeah. Okay, well that works, right. I think. Aha, Erucheb, there you go. See, I like that. Erucheb thinks it's Oyolaire, the evergreen branch that the Númenóreans put on their ships for Unin's protection.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, Erucheb, that would seem to me to sort of cement that reading, right? I mean, if certainly the connection between this branch and the the setting sail, right? Those who sailed from Númenor there, the 9 ships, right? And Inglor, the fact that the vine splits at both ends, that is what to me suggests the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, right? So you've got like you've got the one thread, right? Each the branch of Oyolare, if that's what this is, and Erucheb, I totally agree that that's the likeliest interpretation. Where else do we see sort of vine imagery like this, right?
That's true.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but that it's splitting at both ends would then show how you've got like the descendants of Anarion down there and the descendants of Isildur up there, right, north and south. Now it's not
Fort
that
Dauntless.
Sorry, go ahead.
Fort Dauntless makes a good point, and that was the point I was about to bring up too. These don't look like evergreen.
Well, they don't look like
unless you interpret it as a plant that doesn't die in the winter.
Exactly,
but it's
like holly.
Certainly not it's not a corniferous. It's not a coniferous.
No,
it's a deciduous thingamadigger.
Right. No, it would have leaves like holly. I mean, all that we know is that Oyolare didn't wither. So
ivy, some kind of ivy.
Some kind of ivy. Yeah.
Holly and the ivy stuck in my head again.
Exactly.
It's too soon.
Yeah, too soon. It's not even Halloween yet. So, yeah. No, I like that. I like that. Yeah, the split north and south. Now, I'm saying north and south because this is up and down. Of course, very often we've seen them horizontal, but still,
Yeah, we
at
mostly
one
see
end
them
and the other,
horizontally.
it's totally fine. It works either way.
Uh-huh.
All right. No, I think we've finally, with the help of this giant-sized carving here, solved what has been an enduring problem in our archaeology to this point. Okay.
Yay, fall leaves, fall leaves.
Yes, we're all autumnal over here. Okay, so we've got a couple elves hanging out. And I'm trying to...
My friend Barakan keeps a cat. Yes.
I'm trying to look at their shirts.
Oh, it's that generic green T-bird I've seen.
We've got some heraldry here.
There is heraldry.
It's a shield. It's a quartered shield.
Is that a bow in the middle?
Is that a... What is that on the top right? Is that a chicken?
It's commemorating your chicken run to Rivendell.
A partridge? What? I can't
really
What's on the
tell.
bottom left? A squirrel? I can't. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a boat. It's a boat and a seagull. There we go.
That would work, I guess.
Not on a green background, though.
No idea.
Yeah, I can't really get a look at the way.
To see. Maybe when we get to...
I feel improper examining her this closely.
Yeah,
honestly.
I know. I feel like I'm examining. I'm like invading.
Let's see if we see anyone who's standing up.
Yeah.
And,
I can't crouch down and get on her level, unfortunately, which makes it more awkward.
Not with the camera, at any rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It came out wrong. I'm sorry.
No, I know. It's kind of awkward, right? It's like, it's not like I'm staring at your chest. I'm just staring at your chest, trying to figure out what's...
No, ma'am, it's for academic purposes.
That's right, exactly. No, yeah, I'm not being creepy or anything. I'm sorry. But hey, it's not really any different from when, like, Griffith is being attacked by an orc, and I'm like, oh, if you look at the design on his loincloth, you can see that. Yeah.
Yes, I saw this.
Anyway, okay. All right, so the autumnal colors here in the troll shells are designed to mirror the... like the calendar of the Fellowship, essentially, right?
Yes.
Because it's fall when we get here, so it's fall here.
Yes.
So I'm just looking for signs of sullenness.
Doesn't seem sullen. It seems nice.
Well, the foliage is rather cheerful, admittedly.
Yeah, it is. Then the ground, too. The ground looks like you're walking through a park.
Yeah. Notice that, Strider doesn't immediately go off the road, right? So they make it, like the road is... Like if you try to go off the road, there's like not exactly a cliff, but kind of a cliff. Right?
Sheer drop, yeah.
And then these rocks over here. So like, you kind of have to, almost have to follow the road. Tekovic is pointing out that it's the sullen part is to the north of the road, which is true.
Yes.
Yeah. Then
the
south is much more cheerful down here. So there's a gorge, right? So we're looking for a gorge, which is where they went.
Do you remember which side of the road they said it was on?
North. Yeah, they went north.
North.
Which
so
is kind of what I'm not...
This is right here.
To do, but
Yeah.
It's again, we have a drop here. It's okay. I want to look around. What do I see over there? I thought I got a glimpse of ruin. All right. So what have we here?
Quite a few out here.
A random pillar. That is random. What was there? Who erected a pillar here?
Wow.
Oh, I forgot about how everything has a quest ring on top of it in the troll shells. Here's another one.
Oh, this is where we have our camp out with Bingo, I think.
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. We see Rudaran marks. Now one thing to look out for, and I'm forgetting the name again. I always do this. I shouldn't. I should be more scrupulous about this. But on the discussion board, somebody was asking questions about the Rudaran symbol. So it was a field trip related observation. And that there are, so the forest symbol, like that sort of crown symbol, is in some places, he was saying you can see that it does. What he was interested in was this sort of blob that's underneath the trees, right, in the symbol of Rudar. And he was pointing out, of course, which is very visible, and we were noticing over in Garth Garwin, all of those nice new colored banners that the Cleonth have, clearly show that red, right? So that you have the forest with the red land underneath it. But his question was if perhaps what we're seeing there is a corrupted version of the Rudaran symbol, just as the land itself has been corrupted, which corruption, of course, is reflected in the symbol, right, with the red land right beneath the forest.
Yeah. And the red water running under it.
Yeah, so he said that there were some places where you could see Rudaran symbol, the Rudaran symbol, which didn't have anything under it, which was just trees without the blob underneath at the bottom.
Yes.
And this clearly has the blob, right? Right, coffee is standing right in the middle of it, right, the blob there.
Yes.
So by that theory, by the theory of the person whose name I should remember, hang on, I'm going to look it up.
I always interpreted the blob as like a reflection. It looks a bit like, you have your pine trees and then there's the pine trees reflected in the water beneath them.
It looks a little bit like that. Oh, it's Asterion. Okay, Asterion, right. Who was arguing this. Let me... Yeah. Okay, well, so we'll be on the lookout to see what else we can find there.
But this certainly marks it as a Rudaran edifice.
Yes,
in the middle
and by
of nowhere.
Asterion's argument, a late Rudaran construction, not an early one.
Yeah. I'm going to say there was a rock fall from up above that demolished most of this.
Smashed this. So that those random pillars were the outer periphery of what? A big old gazebo here?
Yeah, sure looked like gazebos.
Those Arnorians loved their gazebos. Okay.
Yeah, what's that about?
So what I'm going to be most interested to see, as I was saying last time, is how much... Ooh, wait. There's more up there. Castles on the hills. Where are we?
Lots of them. Lots of them out here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know where we are because I forget which one this is.
Right.
I love all the red rocks out here. The red rocks look like this sort of red clay-based shale. It's really cool.
Okay. Well, running into trees. Is this one named? No? Okay. Right, see, so there's, again, I can't see anything now. Oh, there we go. Ostdurgan. All right. Yeah, so that Rudaran symbol, that's the newer one. The post-Garth Garwin symbol by Asterion's argument. Let me see if I can... Let me show you. He sent... So Asterion also did send a a screenshot of one of the what the argument was that this is the earlier one. So hang on a second here. Let me see if I can show this on my screen. No, wait, hang on. Let me shift out of that for a second and then shift this over. Okay. So if you look at my screen here, this is his screenshot. This is deep inside Garthar Garwin. I think this is near Ivor.
Oh, yeah.
So the argument is that this is the old symbol of Rudauer, which actually looks as much like it looks like it. So that center piece is not a tree, but it looks like a tower. See, it's even got a window in it.
Oh.
Right, so it looks like a tower flanked by trees, which would make sense for Rudauer, right? It's like a kingdom fortress within...
It's like a cell phone tower.
Disguised to look like a tree?
Disguised to look like a tree.
Right. Yeah, so it's a tower amongst the trees, and notice there's nothing under it. You've just got the trunks of the trees and no blob at the bottom.
Yeah, it's not reflected like the trees are.
Exactly.
Imaginary water.
And this is what was leading Asterion to suggest or theorize that the blob underneath, which is, as we can see in the colored banners, the blood red water of Garthar Garwin underneath, is a post-corruption version, right? It's a post-corruption of the land, and therefore also post-corruption of Rudauer version of this. So that this would have been the older sort of emblem of the old House of Rudauer, and then it was corrupted into this, which reflects the blood red underneath, and you can see that central tower that is still taller. Right now, it does not look any more much different from the other trees. In fact, it's apart from being a little bit skinnier proportionally. It doesn't quite. It's not quite as Christmas tree-like in shape. It does look, as you say, a little bit more like a cell tower disguised as a tree.
Communication tree.
but still, it has lost its towerness, right? Its distinctness. Yeah. One of the results also of the blob at the bottom, which again is sort of the red bloody water at the bottom, is to make it look more like a crown, right? Yeah,
the iron crown. Yeah. But I hadn't thought of it. I always thought it as a reflection. I didn't think of what it was being reflected in.
Right, exactly. So I think that this is an interesting theory of Asterion's, and I'm now going to be on the lookout for more of those distinguishing examples, right? To see if we can find any of those, what Asterion theorizes to be older versions anywhere.
So much tree coverage around here.
Yeah, it's hard to get good looks at things.
Yeah.
Well, and this just looks like a ruined fortress. I mean, this just looks like a fortress. And it's located up in the hill. So this is in what? Is this the middle of the gorge? That they went up? So the hobbits kind of came this way? They didn't come up to
it's at the top of a hill. This isn't part of a gorge, I think. Not sure.
Ooh, almost ran off the stairs there. Yeah, these are huge.
Reminds me a bit of the towers we saw just floating in that island near on the Shire side of the.
Yeah.
That big tower in the middle of the island that didn't seem to serve any purpose.
Right. Okay, here let's see if we can work our way back. Not back the way we came. I'm wanting to God, man, this is massive.
Yeah.
Oh, in fact, if we look at the mini-map, it suggests that fortress was at the end of a wall. Like there were walls on either side here.
Oh, sheer drop. Whoa.
Wait, where was there a sheer drop?
On the other side of one of the outer walls.
Oh.
I almost fell off.
Okay, let's see, where am I here? All right.
Yeah, I can't find where I am. Where
Trying
are
to
we?
orient myself in the... Okay.
I'm so lost.
So this is...
My warrior Ansa is just trying to kill everything right now, so I keep getting stuck.
This is a double... Yeah, hang on a second. Let me...
There I am.
I'm summoning my cat here. Put my cat on attack everything. Is that what I have my cat on? Let's see. No. I want my cat on instant kill.
Yes, kill all the things.
Okay.
Aggressive mode.
Aggressive mode, that's it.
Which is just bar neutral for a cat.
Right. So when I was in California, I learned about cat cafes. I'd never heard of this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People were telling me, like, we were talking about lunch options, and they're like, there's a cat cafe near here, and I'm like, what? Like, they serve cat? And I'm like, no, that's not what it is.
No.
Yeah, I was...
it's a place to go and pet lots of cats while you enjoy
it's
coffee or biscuits or whatever.
Yeah, I know it sounds like a really sweet idea. I am... it's hard.
I would love that. Yeah, no, I'm deathly allergic to all animals, but cats in particular. I have reactions to the cat hair on people's clothing.
Well, that's just it. I mean, that was like literally my first thought. I'm like, if I pass by that place on the street, I'm going to have to burn my clothes, or like it will kill my wife when I get home.
No, I've told my friends, if my body is ever discovered at a cat cafe, suspect foul play.
Yeah. Okay, see, now here, this is interesting because this is not, one wouldn't call this a gorge, exactly.
No, it's not a gorge, it's a hill.
It's a hill.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite of a gorge.
This is the opposite of a gorge. So I'm thinking they didn't go up this way. Okay, there's those...
Yeah. I think there's a sizable dip on the other side of this thing here as it gets closer to the lake. The river, sorry.
Oops. Yeah, and here we've... I'm going to slide down. Okay, so here we are, right. We're back near the river. So, okay. Yeah. No, yeah, Karita, I agree. I thought it was a lovely idea. It's just hard. I've been, as I was explaining to folks out there, I have been like strongly conditioned by 21 years of marriage to a person who will go into anaphylaxis and die anywhere near cats. So like I hear cats, I even picture a room with like a whole bunch of cats in it like that, and like my immediate impulse is to like interpose myself between my family and it for the sake of like preserving their lives.
All of them? All.
Yeah, pretty much. Not my son Nicholas. He's the only one who seems to be non-allergic. But yeah, it's just I get so like in theory it sounds great, but I have this like I've developed this visceral cat reaction over time. So
this part here is kind of a gorge. It starts to go up again.
Right. Okay. So this is definitely gorge-like. And look, from here you can see the ruin up on top of the hill. That's the ruin we were just at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we might look over that and ask if trolls build, right? But of course we know that. So we go down into the gorge. And the fact that they've built the res circle right next to the road at this point seems to me sort of suggestive too.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Right. Okay. So I'm trying to... Oh, and it's getting late. But let's see if we can find... If we go down into the gorge, where do we end up?
Oh, big old rock.
Up there to the left is back where we just were.
Right? Yeah, left. Yeah, on the right, it's just a cliff face. We're boxed in.
So we can't go anywhere. So if that's where we left the path, then we have to end up going.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out where Strider's going, if there's a way of retracing his steps here. We'll have to work on this. Okay, what happens if we come up over here? Can we get through over this way?
Yeah, we can go up the hill.
Oh, more ruins.
More ruins. Or the same ruins. I got a bit turned around.
No, these are not the same ruins. These are different. Oh. No, wait. They are the same ruins. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the same one. Look, there's a sheer drop on the other side, too, so you can't go anywhere else.
We're just approaching it from...
Yeah.
Come
over here.
Perspective.
Yeah, there we go. Now that's a gorge down there. Tell you what, son. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, Katron, of course. Again, with the scale thing, they can't possibly reproduce every element of the landscape as described in the book directly. But, we have noticed some attention to detail when it comes to depicting things that are actively described in the game. Like, remember way back when we were in the Shire, and we were seeing like, oh look, there are the beech trees up along the hills that were described, by the green hill country, so like they do make an effort when things are described. Now the description here was less detailed as far as what they actually saw, and more giving the sort of overall character of things, right?
Yeah, it was spent on the party itself and the feelings they were experiencing at the time.
Yes.
It was all about getting Frodo to safety. It was that ticking clock the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, and so all up here, this is a dead end except for what's a cliff, right?
Mm-hmm. Big old cliff.
All right, so I think that we have established that this is not the gorge we're looking for. All right, but that's okay, because we have other weeks in which we can explore other gorges and see if we can find the way. But we should go because it's getting late.
Yeah.
Whenever it's after midnight, I am feeling...
Well, especially tomorrow. We've got to stay up late tomorrow.
That's true. Big day tomorrow. Day. Halloween tomorrow. Yep. So, okay. Very good. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. And we will stop here. Thanks for helping me crawl around the last bridge, stare creepily at elf ladies, and explore gorges. Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week at the regular time. As usual, I'm pausing to make sure that's true. Yep, I will be here next week. Don't forget to sign up for Magnolia Moot if you can possibly make it to Charlotte, North Carolina next weekend. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye now.
Happy Halloween. Bye.
Yes, happy Halloween.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.